Do you have the experience when you're young and you doodle just for fun, and for years you keep drawing the same way, and it takes such a long time for you to jump from one stage to another in terms of drawing skills, but sometime in the present, when you were deliberately trying to improve your drawing skills, suddenly your skills just improved within a year or sometimes a few months of time? What is happening there, and how do you replicate this process? We are going to talk about it in this episode. Hello everyone, and welcome to another drawing tips episode of INKroverts. This time we are going to talk about the 10 practical and easy ways to improve your drawing skills. And without further ado, let's hop right into it. Alright, now this drawing is a commission piece, and I'm very glad that the commissioner asked me to do this piece sometime in May. It's because before May, in April, my drawing style and skills is quite different. It's probably because I've been practicing and things have been transitioning, slowly evolving from one style to another, and finally in May I've come to a style that I'm comfortable with. And also thanks to the online course from Schoolism, I have received a lot of very useful art tips to improve my drawing. And so finally here, I'm ready to give my best to my commissioner. And so I'm going to talk about the tips I have for you to improve your drawing skills as well. Now, I actually have written an entire article about the 25 practical tips to improve your drawing, and you can find a link in the description below. It's from my blog INKroverts.com. I can show you the table of contents here. I will be talking about 10 of the tips I found the most useful in this video. There are other tips that is more technical, and it's probably better that you go to my blog and read the other tips, because I also find those techniques very useful and they are what carried me to this stage here in the present. So I highly recommend that you read it. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment in this video or under my blog, and I will reply every single one of them. And with that, let's hop on with the first tip. The first one is to learn with a goal. Now, I mentioned in the beginning of this video that when we're very little and we're just doodling with no reason other than we just love doodling, our art skill takes a very long time to evolve. And that's because we don't have a goal. And when you don't have an image of what you want to draw like in the future, then you won't actively improve your skills or find any ways to, actively up your techniques, up your game, etc. And so I would really recommend that you think of a goal, specifically what you want to draw. Do you want to draw illustration or comics or concept art? And for art style, there are hundreds and thousands of different art styles out there. What do you want to draw like? Have a very specific goal and then try to achieve it. You may think that, well, but I really want to draw what I want. I draw because I like drawing, and if I sacrifice my own ideas for learning techniques, then what's the point? Well, it's okay for you to draw what you like. It's perfectly fine. It's completely not contradictory from what I'm talking about here. A goal is exactly what you want. If you don't want it, why would you have a goal? If you don't want it, why would you have it as a goal? But the difference between having a goal and not having a goal is that with the goal, you are marking down a path for yourself instead of wandering around without a specific idea of what you're doing. And instead of being a jack of all trades, why don't you master your own style and then hop onto another and then hop onto another? Okay, number 2 is to practice. Practice is very important. That's why I have to say 3 times in a row. I know that a lot of people find it very tiring to hear this again and again. No matter if you're an athlete, if you're a musician, if you're an artist, you always hear the word practice, and that's because it's important. I don't see myself as a very hard-working person in the past. I registered to the online course, and the teacher there told us to do the art study every single day, at least 2 very simple study every single day. And I've found that I have a long way to go. And it's okay, I'm not saying that you should draw an hour every single day if you can't find the time. I'm just saying that the more you practice, it is guaranteed that your practice will pay off. It doesn't matter if you're making mistakes in your practice, because that's the point. Before the course, I was making an artwork every week, and that's why my drawing has been improving in these years. Before, and when I was studying in primary, secondary school, I sometimes have such a huge gap, maybe a gap of months when I'm not drawing at all, and that's why I was very slow in improving, and I'm improving much faster now. It's because of the frequency of my practice. And you can ask any teacher, any artist, any practitioner how important is practice, and I can say that 100% of them will say it is important. There's nothing more to say about practice, just practice. Okay, number 3, it's a technical point, is to draw big shapes first, then details. And that is to see things in shapes instead of lines. You can look at my drawing and see, when you squint, you can see a big white triangle in the middle of the painting. The 2 boys are sitting at the bottom of the triangle, and the tip of the triangle is where the bamboos meet, and the rest of the painting are made mostly a pale greenish yellowish color, and at the bottom edge of the painting is a very dark green, almost to black. And this is how you see a painting and how you do a painting study, instead of drawing every single bamboo in the first place. You can mark down the details in your pencil draft, but when you're actually starting to paint, you'd want to do the big shapes first, because that's what the audience see in the first place. They're not going to zoom in and then marvel at your details and then zoom back out. The first thing they see is the whole picture, and so you have to manage the whole picture first before you hop on to the small things. Okay, number 4 is to create contrast. To put it technically, you want to separate the subjects from each other using contrast. For example, you can look at the 2 characters there. Their silhouette is very clear because the background is white and they pop out from it. Now imagine if these 2 characters are very brightly lit, that they are almost white. At this point, they will be almost merging with the background. You won't be able to notice them. And that's a mistake that I made, and I saw some other artists made in other websites, is that sometimes the character's color is so similar to the background and other objects that they merge with each other. And if you want the character to pop out even more, you can use the 5th tip, which is decide on a color scheme. Now, it's not that you can, it is actually very important to decide a color scheme for your artwork, because sometimes I see artwork that has a very random color palette, and they would put, red here, green there, yellow there, blue there, and the whole picture looks very messy because you cannot find a focus point on the drawing. Oh, that corner is in a bright red, maybe I should look there. Oh, but the character is in the middle, should I look there first? But is there any hidden secret detail at the bottom of the drawing, because there's such a bright green, and then your eyes will be darting everywhere? Maybe sometimes illustrators do that deliberately, but their technique is very calculated. Comparing it to having no color scheme at all, not planning any color palette from the beginning, you would get that incomplete feeling even when you complete the artwork. And how do you make consistent color scheme for your artwork? Well, I would use a technique from graphic designers, is that they use a primary color and a secondary color and then an accent color for an artwork. But you don't have to just stick to 3 colors exactly. You can use some slight variation from those colors for darker places and lighter places. For example, you can look at my painting here, the bamboo forest, and basically you can just limit all the color from yellow to green. You know, you can't see any purple and blue in this drawing. They're mostly green and yellow. And you can also see the same thing in this drawing of mine. This illustration is also purple and some green, and this painting is blue mostly, and there's some tinges of green, etc, etc. You can look up concept art, and many other artists are doing the same thing, except they have more variation that makes their painting looks colorful but not messy. It's very calculated and organized. And speaking of referencing other concept artist artwork, we comes to the 6th point, which is imitate your favorite artist or any artist that you like. Now, I understand that a lot of us are very conscious about copying other people, and we don't like to copy. We want to have original ideas, but the truth is, truly original ideas, things that nobody's ever done before, do not exist. Almost every single idea in this world is built up from another idea from the past. And there's no shame in trying to imitate your favorite artist in terms of improving your own drawing skills. And sometimes you would even find your own style while trying to imitate your favorite artist. And there was a quote from J.K. Rowling, and she said that advice to other young writers who, aspire to write a book of their own. And she said that at first, you probably imitate your favorite writers, but that's a good way to learn. After a while, you find your own distinctive voice. And the same thing goes for other areas like art. Imitation is a good way to learn from other people, because that means you are actively doing something to learn other than, reading textbooks. You are holding up your pen and studying your favorite artist in order to learn what you like about the artist and apply it for yourself. And that is a meaningful and humbling experience. Which brings us to the next point, which is experiment with different styles. Now, what does that mean? At the very beginning, when you are studying art techniques, you will find yourself interested in many different things. And you'll come to the dilemma of whether I should be like this or whether I should chase after that route. And it can become frustrating, because at first I said that we have to learn with a goal. If you have multiple different directions, you can't have a single consistent goal in mind. And I say it's alright, it's perfectly fine and perfectly natural for us to want to experiment with different styles. And we should experiment with different styles, because if we don't try something, how will we know whether we actually fit? And sometimes we don't exactly like a style as a whole, but we want to pick something, an element or two from that style, and apply it to ourselves. And in my own experience, there are some things I do, some color adjustments, some character styles is what I picked from different artists I learned from. And I can't list out everything that a style has, because that is too many, and you will know it when you want to apply it to yourself. I can give some examples. The subject matter. Some artists like to draw environment, some like to draw portraits, and then there's the detailedness. Is that what you call it? Some artists like to draw very stylized characters, but some want to have a more realistic take. And some artists like to use cell shading, and some like to use gradients, and some people in between. And it all really depends on your own preference and your own goal. So don't worry about experimenting different styles. Don't worry about failing. Don't worry about copying. because you are studying and learning. But while you are studying other art style, here comes the 8th tip, which is to practice drawing characters through anatomy or figure drawing. This is a very basic thing about drawing characters. I don't know if you want to only focus on drawing environment and scenery, but a lot of artists want to draw characters or put characters in their environment painting. And because you are drawing characters, you have to practice drawing figures. There are a lot of resources on YouTube, on Pinterest and lineofaction.com, etc. for you to practice figure drawing. And you don't have to take a long time to draw figures. If you don't have enough time, maybe 20 minutes is alright. And some people like to draw an hour or two. It all really depends. And anatomy is different from figure drawing. If you really want to focus on drawing portraits or designing characters, anatomy is quite important, because anatomy is about figuring out all the bone structure, the muscles, the joints, etc, while figure drawing is basically about the form in general. And they can be tricky, especially at first. When you've practiced for a while, you'll start to get more comfortable with drawing figures. A lot of young artists would relate to the agony of drawing hands and fingers and feet. These things are hideous. And after some practice on drawing hands, you get comfortable with the idea, and you even can figure out some ways to make drawing hands much easier for yourself. These all comes with practicing figure drawing and anatomy. But I would recommend that you draw figures first before you move on to anatomy, because anatomy is the more advanced area. And with our second last tip is very important, super important. Don't be afraid of failure. All these previous tips can fail. For you, I don't know, maybe when you practice figure drawing, you can't draw this figure as well as you expect, and when you try to imitate your favorite artist, you ended up drawing something else. And when you draw big shapes first and details later, you somehow draw out very, very small shapes that are basically details, I don't know. And these so-called failures are necessary for you to learn what not to do in the future. And it's great that you can do it, but if you never failed, there's only one explanation, is that you didn't practice enough. It's impossible. I can't think of any ways that you won't be able to experience failure. I failed a lot of paintings, I just don't post them. There are a lot of practice sketches I did back then. I have a few sketchbooks full of them, and a few of them under my bed, and I would never in my life publicize them. And I believe that a lot of different artists, even professional artists, have bad drawings here and there, even when they entered the professional industry. So don't be afraid of failure. They exist for a reason, and is quite irrational to let failure stop you from drawing at all, or practicing drawing. Anyway, last but not least, don't be a perfectionist. It's a separate point from don't be afraid of failure, because a mindset of perfectionism is sometimes quite hard for us to spot. Sometimes we believe that we just have a high standard for ourselves. I want to do better, that's why I've been drawing this thing for the past months. There's a difference between having a high standard and being a perfectionist. If you have a high standard, you know the level you want to expect from yourself. But if you're a perfectionist, there is no limit about how good your painting can be. You just want to be better and better until the point you over-render your painting and it becomes actually worse than the start. And it took me a long time to figure out that sometimes a simpler drawing is better than an over-rendered drawing. I think I still make that mistake sometimes here and there in the present. And if you don't know whether your painting is good enough, There are some ways to help you. One of them is to let your art sit for 24 hours or more, and then you come back to the drawing and then you can see your artwork in a different angle or a different light, and you can tell what your art is missing or whether your art is actually enough. Or sometimes you can ask your friends or family about what they think about your artwork, and it's okay if your family and friends aren't artists at all. In fact, it's better. You know, they're looking from the point of view of an average audience, and they can tell you what an average audience would feel when they look into your artwork. And these things can help you to stop thinking by yourself over and over that you need to adjust this, you need to be better at this little spot in your painting, and my artwork needs to be perfect, etc., etc. Because these mindsets are what makes you procrastinate and makes you spend more time than necessary to complete a drawing. You want your portfolio to be full of beautiful artwork, but not perfect artwork, then just one single so-called perfect artwork. And that's it. That's all my 10 tips for today. If you want more detailed elaboration on these 10 points and the extra 15 tips on how to improve your drawing, you can visit my blog INKroverts.com to take a look at that, or you can simply click the link in the description below. And with that, hope you enjoy this video and I hope you practice, and then we'll see each other next time. Make sure to like and subscribe this video. I'll see you next time. Bye!